right. All right, now I can see everybody. Can you see my screen that says the future of leadership starts here? Awesome, awesome. Okay, well, we'll probably have a few more people joining us along the way. I'm really excited to be here again with you. I know a couple of you who have been to a couple of other sessions that I did, but I'm really excited today because I'm going to be talking a lot more about this new framework that I've been working on as a way to continue to do the work that we need to do in order to get to those DEI outcomes that are so important. But I'm going to show you a pathway for how to get there so that you not only build sustainable ways to keep track of your DEI and see that movement, but that you're also just making the organization better, right? These are practices that are actually going to just make it better for all employees, which is, I think, the way that we have to think about things now, right? Like, how do we solve problems for all employees instead of always thinking about maybe subsets, right? You can get to the subsets once you kind of identify, what's needed for everyone. So this is just a little sneak peek here. The future belongs to organizations that put their people first, those bold enough to lead with integrity, invest in their people, and build systems that last. These are just quotes that, as I was building this model was coming up for me, um, mostly because, I really see when you put people first in your decision making, in your processes, when you ask people what do they want, what do they see, what is their perspective, you gain so much more. And that's what we're looking for for people in the organization. So we're going to talk a lot about people first leadership. But first, now we've got the full group here. I'll do a formal intern announcement or introduction. All right. So this is me. I've been in the field of diversity, leadership, and organizational development for 25 years. Um, and it has changed and evolved a lot throughout the years. So I remember back when people were doing DI and it was just trainings because everybody thought of DI as a training, or training and recruitment because you're looking at how do you bring people in. But over the years, folks started to want a more holistic perspective, which is what we did at Stanton Adams, build some of those tools and frameworks to help organizations think holistically about all of their employees. So my personal background as areas of expertise are in three areas. The first is around leader and culture, leadership and organizational development, which includes that cultural aspect, right? So these are things like going in and working with the executive leaders to develop their strategy, their vision, their mission, and their values. Those are really important to this framework that I'm going to show you, because if you don't have those things really intact and very strong, then your messaging from the top is going to be off, right? People are going to be hearing different things. You should not have a different vision for each department. I know sometimes each department likes to have their own little kind of mission that kind of pulls off of the main mission. That's fine, but not to have a completely different one, right? Because everybody should be singing off the same sheet of music within your organization. So talent strategy. And again, not just thinking about recruitment, but that entire talent pipeline from the moment you have an idea that you might have a need to bring someone in. That's the moment, or even before then, is a good time to really think out your recruitment process. Many of you probably already have recruitment processes in place. So the work may be just auditing that process to see where do you have gaps along the way. Is it where you're putting your job ads out? Are people kind of getting turned off during that first interview? Where are you seeing, the most diversity? Where are you seeing the least? It is still legal to look at, your hiring pool, as long as you're not the decision maker, the person hiring the person. So usually it's the recruiter who can see who's coming in, and it's the recruiter's job to be like, okay, well, I've got all men in this pool. I've got to continue to go out and bring more folks in so I have a good balanced full pool. Because again, remember, our goal is to pick the best person for the job. Well, we can't pick the best person for the job if they're not in the room. And that's what happens a lot of times. We go to the people that we know, and the best of those are the ones that get hired. Well, we may not have a direct connection to that best person, right? So recruitment has a lot of areas that you can come in and really start to clean up. Leadership development. So, I come from academic background. So I've developed curriculum, I've taught in the college classroom, and I'm very well versed in adult learning practices. But I've also spent a lot of time with executive leaders and board members, really helping them think through their strategy and how to drive that through the organization. Culture and change strategy is another area of expertise for me. I utilize many different assessments and tools to really understand and gauge what is your culture. Like, we all talk about this culture, but what is it? How does it create? How does it get created? And how do you maybe change things up? And I'll tell you, your leaders are the main contributors of your culture. Your CEO should be the owner of your culture, right? They're the spokesperson for the organization, right? So they should be modeling what they want to see across the organization. So a great example is I've seen lots of executive leadership teams that work in a complete silo. So they make their decisions within this bubble, and then they give you the decisions down. The decisions get pushed down instead of maybe that group saying, hey, here's what we're thinking about. Let's shoot it down to some folks, to a couple of departments, and get ideas. Where are our blind spots? Let's give it to the people who are actually going to use it. What are we missing? Right? Then filter that back up. Then the leaders make the final adjustments, right? Oftentimes we don't see that happening, and executive leaders may sometimes say, oh, our organization is siloed. But if the executive leadership team is siloed, the rest of your organization is probably also siloed as well, right? So again, the things that you want to see, you got to see it at the top. If it's not at the top, it's highly unlikely to be living in your organization. And then implementing large scale change, right? When you're making change, there is a whole process there where you have to understand human behavior, that people aren't going to go, oh, yes, a change. I love it, right? People are going to be a little bit like, what? Okay, what? Especially right now when people are polarized around things, there's just a lot of intensity going on in the workplace right now. So, people may be, resistant. And that's hard for someone who's trying to make change because they want the people to come along. But if you go about it thinking like, okay, I'm introducing change, it's going to be hard emotionally for many people. Let me understand what that process is so that I can meet people where they're at, right? That's the important work that happens there. And then facilitation and training. That's my love. Probably the first thing that I did where I was like, yes, I'm through and through. I'm a teacher. I love to take complex things and make it simple. I like to take complex things and make more complex things and then make it simple. And so this is me. And I've worked with over 500 different organizations throughout my 20 plus years experience. So I'll be bringing that to the table as well. All right. So this is my wife. My wife and I started Stanton Adams Consulting in 2010, and then we were established with all the paperwork in 2013. And then shortly after George Floyd's death, we also opened the Diversity Institute, which is our educational hub. So this class would be hosted in the Diversity Institute. We have a club, we have a portal for the Institute, so you can go in, you can take classes, and that's what we're continuing to build on through the years. So that's us. I don't have your picture in here, but I would say that definitely my right hand is in the room, and that is Olivia. There you go, Olivia. Hi, Olivia. So Olivia's been with me for many, many, many years. She's my second daughter. My first daughter's here too, somewhere. Oh yeah, right next there to Olivia. Hi, Celicia. Um, my other hand. But Olivia is, if you've contacted us at any point, is most likely Olivia that you're getting. Olivia does a lot for the Diversity Institute and for Stanton Adams and for me. So I'm so glad to have you. And to have her on this journey with me because it has been quite a journey, let me tell you. All right, so I want to start with a little what do you call a little poll, And I have a few questions throughout the poll so that we can kind of get to know each other a little bit more, kind of see where you're at in this point. So if you look at the screen, you can either use the QR code that's here. Oh, I wish it did it in the middle. I guess it doesn't. Use that QR code to get to the presentation, or you can go to at the top, you see it says menti.com, and then you can put that code in. So either open another Explorer window, or you can use your cell phone. You are going to get a copy of all these slides. We'll send those out with the recording. So don't worry if you didn't capture something. We'll make sure that you get it at the end. All right, feeling challenged, tired, exhausted, anxious, lost, stretched, energized, frazzled, polarized. Wow, upset, yes. Determined, love it. Stubborn. And the bigger the word, the more people have said it. So take a look. These are the types of things that you're probably feeling amongst your employees at work. You know, any given day, they're walking around with these things in their head, in their mind. And it could be for anything. I mean, it could be all the things. There's so many things that are heavy on employees right now, especially the polarization. I'm curious, I don't have a question for it, so I'd be curious if somebody would be interested in coming off of mute to just say a little bit about, how has polarization showed up in your workplace? Do you see any signs of it? And what are people doing about it? Any thoughts on that? Is there polarization in the workplace? Yes. Okay. Just curious about that. Since I'm not in a workplace, so I dip in and out of organizations, but it's interesting to hear what's happening inside. Okay, Laura, and you can
Yes,
raise your hand if you have a question. I know sometimes it's awkward to just jump in. Go ahead.
absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura, she, her, hers, and I'm with Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity. Um, I would say that, uh, of course, I don't have like a full pulse on our entire organization, but I think the word I'd use is fragmented. I don't know
Mm,
if it's like there's a polarity. It just feels like people are in so many different places depending on the day. So I
mm,
think like this, like the word cloud that we have here really captures like where people are at any given moment just based on what's going on personally for them, what's going on in the social political space, and then what's going on at work. And people kind of oscillate between all of these different thoughts and emotions. And so um, yeah, it just it's very fragmented.
yes. Um, so I'm curious about after the murder of Charlie Kirk, we know social media went wild. Um, what was happening in your organizations? Was everybody kind of like mum's the word? Were there quiet conversations? Anybody?
Hey, I'm Anna
Oh,
Peterson.
Anna, go ahead.
I also work at Twin Cities Habitat. I felt like I brought it up to a couple people one on one the day after he was murdered, and there was this like hesitation on why we were talking about it.
Yeah.
Like the mum's the word is a great way to say it. Like, I mean, I felt like people didn't know how to hold two truths together at the same time. That it was an awful thing that happened, and that he had some views that were not inclusive and, at all, and really hateful sometimes. And we have a lot of staff who have different political beliefs and, all over the map. And I felt like it was safer not to talk about it at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I see some nods. Yeah, it's just awkward. Maybe don't say anything, which is kind of weird, right? When like a big thing happens in the world and it feels so weird to come back and be like, business as usual. So we know this is not normal, right? So I want us to accept like this is not normal. And these are happening because of all of the changes that are happening in the world. And no matter who anyone voted for, whether they voted or not, they're going to be feeling a lot of these feelings. And it's hard to be engaged and to really feel like I'm giving it my all when all of these things are things that I'm thinking about and struggling with. Right? So it's important to kind of keep that in mind, especially if you're doing any kind of change initiatives, right? Change initiatives, especially for this year, should be nice and easy, nice and easy. Try not to do like a whole technology like overload or add a whole new bunch of tools that everybody has to learn. It will be far more, emotionally taxing for people right now. Okay, so the purpose today is we're going to talk a little bit about the DI landscape and then also what's legal, what's illegal. We'll just briefly kind of touch on that. Um, my journey, so how I got to where I got to with the framework, and then we'll go into the people first framework. Now, if Olivia, could you manage the chat for me? And I'm going to just pull it up because I think a couple people did say something here. Okay. Oh, good. Go ahead, everybody. Just want to see if there was a question. All right. So I had to have someone say, yes, it kind of feels like just everyone stopped talking about anything that matters. It's only about work, which can be fine, but there are people struggling and no one really knows how to handle it. Yes. Yes. So true. It's interesting to think about. It's safer to not talk about it at all because that doesn't mean people aren't talking about it. They're just talking about it in a really selective circles, which definitely would heighten any fragmentation. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So look for that, look for that in your organization. And you don't always have to do anything about it, right? Just yet, but just notice when it starts to kind of ramp up, when people aren't, laughing, smiling, connecting with one another like they would normally. All right. So, top 5 reasons for the anti-DEI movement. Many of you have probably heard these arguments, but these are the ones that consistently come up. Equity versus merit. Can we truly have equity and have merit? Well, actually, you can. Because if you want the best person for the job, you need to have an equitable process so that you can't hire your cousin Bob, which is what you do when you don't have a DEI program. So DEI, right, is actually a merit program. It's based on meritocracy, right? It's one and the same. Purpose of DEI work is to make a meritocracy actually work, right? You're trying to make sure that you're getting representatives from lots of different communities. You want to make sure everyone has a consistent experience, that everybody's being measured using the same standards, right? And the same competencies. You're not switching it up from person to person, right? Because that's when bias comes in, and that's where you start to connect with the people you like, but maybe now you're not looking for those things that you need in terms of competency. So when you do those things, you're creating a meritocratic program. So when you hear that, don't let it sting. Just know, yeah, it's the same thing. Sort of like when people say they don't like Obamacare, they like this other care and it's a different word, but it's actually still Obamacare. Yeah. So focus on identity politics. So, a lot of the focus has been, we don't want to focus on who people are and who their identity is, that shouldn't matter and that has no place in the workplace. Right. Now we know that obviously who we are is going to impact our experience of the world, right? And an experience in an organization. And I think the issue that comes for this is not necessarily that we're talking about identities, but maybe that some people miss that they're not being talked about as having an identity. As an example, I've spoken to many white people who've gone through the IDI who will say, I don't have a culture, or I don't know my culture. I've never had to really think about my culture. And so if you hear everyone else kind of talking about their culture, there's nobody like you that's being kind of focused on to say, okay, here's people like this. That's when they come up and say, can I have a men's group? And everybody looks at them like, really? But that's the need, right? That's a need that's happening right there. They're saying we don't want to focus on identity politics because we are not included in that. which they should be included from the beginning, right? And those of you who work with me know that right from the start, when I share the wheel, the diversity wheel, it's a way of saying we all have layers of difference, right? Even two people in the exact same community, they're gonna be different, and that's okay. And it's about really understanding how does your experience change depending on who you are. Is that a hand up, Sarah, or is that a just a looks like a little hand up on your thing, but it's not. Um, all right, free speech and open debate concerns. Well, we're seeing a lot of that now, right? This free speech, and do we have free speech or not? And my daughter and son-in-law were talking about this the other day, because when we talk about free speech, it means that everyone can have free speech, not just the people that we like, not just the people that say things that we agree with, but free speech is it actually doesn't work unless you can be okay with people saying things you absolutely don't agree with, right? Or else you're saying it's their speech allowed, but only this type of speech, right? So it's a little tricky, right? Especially when you get into things like, neo-Nazi group, right? Can you have a neo-Nazi group do a parade down the street if it's peaceful, right? Things like that are what make it puts free speech to the test, right? Like how much are we committed to that? And how can we determine what speech leads to violence, right? Because that is also a very thin line. So how do you kind of figure out where that tipping point is going to be? DEI overemphasis and fatigue. Frankly, I'm tired of saying DEI. It's been like fraught with so much just negativity. It's been villainized. It's just talked about so badly that I'm like, this is they took the fun out of it. But yeah, people that are on this side that are doing the work, they're also tired. They're tired because we're pushing back. We're dealing with lots of open resistance in a way that we haven't before. The resistance has always been there, but not as openly as it's become, right? And then questions about DEI effectiveness. So what's working here? We've been doing this for how many years? And the top of the leadership still looks like this. We still have issues recruiting. We still have issues promoting. What's happening? I don't think this DEI stuff is working. So these are some of the complaints and things that people have been coming back with resistance points. And I think, one thing that we can do as practitioners or as leaders is to understand those 5 things from a place of empathy, right? And I know that's hard to do. It took me a long time to do it. But even with equity versus merit, like first I didn't even want to think about that because I'm like, that's just stupid. But then as I thought about more and more and I listened to people talk about it more and more, it was in one conversation I had with somebody and I was like, oh, so what we've been doing is actually merit based. It's actually creating that merit. We want to create an equal playing field within DEI programs so that everybody has that opportunity. So that made me see it a different way, right? And then now I don't get as like angry if I see meritocracy is being used for it. I'm like, yeah, that's good. That's what we do. um, so
There's
really,
a question in the chat,
oh yeah, go
Cecilia.
ahead.
Denise says, when people say I don't have a culture, is it sometimes that they are the default culture?
Yeah, exactly. So if they say they don't have a culture, it's most likely because they've only been in those places with people around them that look like them, maybe same religion. Like if you're in a fishbowl, the fish doesn't know that it's swimming in a fishbowl, right? Like when you're outside of the fishbowl, you can see it, but when you're inside, you think, oh, everybody's inside this water. So you never have to see a difference. Like from folks that have not had those experiences, I sometimes hear them say, oh, the first Black person I ever met was in high school or in college. So that tells me like you really haven't had to interact with someone who may have a different communication style, right? Different language, different ways to operate in how they communicate with one another. And so when it happens, like, oh, I went to college, my roommate's different than me. Now I'm getting that learning that some of us get while growing up. So I grew up in New York City. Like I was constantly around different cultures, and people were very, very grounded in their culture, especially nationally, right? So you couldn't call somebody, Honduran if they were Puerto Rican. They're going to correct you. And so, so you can see how from a young age, I could understand, oh, there's different types of Latinos and there's different aspects to each one's cultures that are different. Whereas somebody who's never been around a Latino person before is going to say, oh, they're all Latino, like they're all Mexican, which is what people would think when I told them I was from Honduras. They're like, Mexico? No. Yeah, so that's part of it. Not ever having to ask the question. And the thing is, like, everyone has a culture. You just have not ever thought about it. Not a bad thing. It's just an opportunity now to say, okay, who am I? Who makes me who I am today? Another times people struggle if they've grown up in a very traditional, like all white, all, same religion, and then they've kind of moved away and they're like in an environment where there's lots of diversity. Maybe they married someone of a different race. They have mixed multiracial children. And so they often sometimes feel like they don't have a culture because their kids and their spouse are different and they can see the culture living there, but they don't see it living in them because they feel like, I think the real answer is that new culture that you created in your family, that is your culture, right? You are a person that lives within a multicultural family. And that's part of who you are. You're someone who is spiritual versus Christian, right? So articulating who you are gives you a grounding, a sense of, yes, this is me. And that gives you the fortitude to be able to interact with others who are different without being defensive. Because when you're not really sure who you are, and other people start talking about who they are, it kind of makes you feel a little defensive a little bit because you don't have an answer and you don't know what to say about your own culture. So I think that's something we can all do. Did that answer your question? What was that question again? I want to make sure I got it.
Yeah, Denise is doing a heart react.
Okay, good. All righty. Move out of there. So let's talk about navigating everything that's happening in today's workforce and how organizations are responding. So number one, we're seeing substantive changes to corporate initiatives or policies like Meta, McDonald's, Bank of America. McDonald's was really surprising to me because I remember back when they were like, Leroy doing the commercials, Leroy got a job at McDonald's, and it was like a great thing. And they'd been so committed to multicultural communities. So unfortunately that happened. There's also been a reframing. So BlackRock moved away from the term DEI using other words. So I've heard culture, talent, inclusion, belonging, all of these different terminology. I will tell you that that will be the next wave of audits for companies. The administration is already talking about the fact that they know that people have changed names or they've changed people's titles. And so their threat is that they're going to be, next kind of coming after those that have changed the name. We'll see. They seem to have a lot on their plate. But it's good to know, right? It's good to know as you think about future planning and discontinuation of DI adjacent initiatives. So for example, Walmart reduced investment in Racial Equity Center after they made commitments after George Floyd. So we see a lot of that coming back. And that's just at a very high level. Any questions about the different approaches that people have had? All right. So when it comes to leadership at your organization, have they been transparent on their stance or commitment around DEI? Have they been transparent?
Cecilia, while people are putting in their votes, there is a question that's a little bit of a tangent, but I think still worth talking about. Celicia is asking, I feel like our current our current culture doesn't create natural opportunities to be around people different from you. With the internet and our communities, we can all navigate the world while having very little interaction outside of ourselves. Do you think people are out of practice in connecting across differences, and how can we strengthen that again?
I don't think they ever did it. We're not out of practice. We just never did it. And so, so naturally, people are going to be in spaces with people that are most like them. And a lot of times it's not even conscious, right? But if I look up and down my block, like probably we're not far apart in terms of income level. We're not far apart, maybe even politically. If I think about the different place or groups that I go to, they're a lot like me. And so to me, I feel like the biggest and best place where you get exposed to that diversity is in school, work, college, right? So every day that a person goes to work is their opportunity to be around someone they never would have to interact with in their normal world, right? They may see and be good friends with people of races or ethnicities that person never had in their house before. So it does give that opportunity. And that's why the workplace is fraught with these issues, because we don't have the practice of doing this outside of work, right? And I think we will continue to see this same challenge until people start to bring it into their personal life. Because ultimately, this work of DEI is not about just programs and practices, but it's about how you live it on a day-to-day basis. So, my family, we talk a lot about polarization and how do we kind of get out of that. And I recently signed up to become a part of the Citizens Police Academy. And it's a 7-week program where you go through a pretty rigorous training and you learn all like the different tactics and, use of force and all the things that they do and on a day-to-day basis. So you really get to know like what they deal with. And I was just really, I wanted to just understand a scary place from a human perspective, because I don't want to be terrified in my house. And if like they end up putting the troops out here, I know I'll be terrified and I won't know like, is my police department a safe place to be? I would assume no. So I wanted to test that. And so I started the program. I'm now in my 4th week. And I love it. Every day that I come home, I'm just like going on and on about everything that I've learned and just so many things that I didn't know that I know now just from interacting with somebody who is different. So all of you can model that as well. Where are you putting yourself in places where you are engaged with people different than yourself? It's really important. All right, so I see here when it comes to leadership, they've been transparent. 9 have been fully transparent. That's really good. That's really good. That's been one of the downfalls from many organizations. They just don't want to talk about it. They're just, well, I guess people kind of know, whatever. No, they don't. And if you don't say anything, people will fill the blanks. And think about it. If there's not a big crisis right now, now's the time to be transparent. Now's the time to start the practice of being transparent. Because then when something big happens, it's not like, oh my God, we got to put something together and how are we going to communicate this? You already have a process in place and you just seamlessly have it go through there. Also, when folks are being transparent, make sure that they have some way of bringing that feedback back up. Leadership pushes stuff a lot down, or departments push stuff out. But do we ask it to come back with feedback, with follow-up, with blind spots that folks might have missed? All right, so we have folks 4 here of organizations that said sometimes. So it's better than none. But again, the more you can be in practice of this, the more that it's easier to do it when it's really important, when you're struggling. Okay, so navigating the volatile workplace right now, one of the things that we don't want to forget is, we want to stay in compliant. We don't want to get on the bad side of the government. However, by moving away from DEI, we are also going to be at risk for losing the very things that it brought us. So loss of talent. We know people still want to work where they believe. And right now the market is tough. So people are staying, but they're still quietly quitting, right? They're at their desk every day and every morning, leaving at 5, not doing much in between because it's they don't have it in them anymore, right? They don't really care because maybe it's not aligned with who they are as a person. Reduced employee engagement, right? And like some organizations like to have like, oh, we're gonna have a pizza day, and then we're gonna have like a bouncy house, everybody come in, and oh, and now we're having another thing to try to bring people in. If you notice, it's really hard to get people in, then they don't think that's fun. We've got to really think about like how can we talk about DEI? How can we not talk about DEI, but say engagement is really important, right? It's a mixed message. And again, ones that our employees can struggle with. Decrease competitiveness, because think about the last question I asked. How many leaders are being transparent? Right. So let's compare the competitiveness of those that said yes versus those that said no. We didn't have anyone in this room, but there's many out there that probably no is their answer, right? Who do you think is going to be more competitive out of the two? I would guess probably the one where the leadership is being more transparent. So there's little ways in this period of time, because it's so volatile, if you're intentional, you can build in some infrastructure so that you really start to fly forward ahead of your competition during this time, right? Getting your top talent, right, during this time, because people are really wanting to find those positions. So how can you maybe spend more time learning about automation and AI, so that you're keeping up with technology and all of those things that are going to impact us. So navigating this situation, I pulled up Costco because they're a great example of what benefits do we get when we continue this work. Acquisition of top talent. So if you got folks in your organization saying like, we have to have a meritocracy, like this is merit-based, we want the best and the brightest. Well, guess what? They're not going to come here if it's not what they need, if it's not aligned with who they are as an individual. Performance and innovation, right? Like Costco's getting real innovative in all the things that they're putting out. Lots of new different like ethnic recipes and stuff like that, or products that they've put out. Customer loyalty. Like if you ask somebody, are you Sam's Club or Costco? That what? You don't even got to ask. People are grounded in where they're going to shop. Crisis resilience and reputation management. Those who continue through this work, right, and stay dedicated to this, they're becoming really good at crisis resilience. So think about it. Costco said, hey, we're going to continue to do this. They got a lot of loyalty, but they got a lot of hate. They got a lot of hate as well. And they lived through that 10 toes down, right? Guess what? When this comes around again, they've got experience dealing with this kind of stuff and choosing to do what they believe despite what's happening. So it's going to be a lot easier if I have to do this again, right? So those organizations are really building their reputation management. All right. So if we're looking at all these things that are challenges for our workplace environment, it's clear that there's more things needed, not just DEI, right? It's really about how do we navigate all of things that are happening, the ways that employees are working or not working together. How do we embrace technology so that we can get ahead? How do we utilize artificial intelligence? What about economic uncertainty and the tariffs? And oh my, it's a lot, right? It is definitely a lot. So quick question, how has this environment impacted your organization the most? So when you think about all those things on this slide here, where are you feeling it the most? And it could be maybe a certain group of employees, maybe it can be just getting specific things done. What's top of your mind? Enable comments. Okay. Employer engagement. That's hard to do right now. You know, if people are feeling like scared and frustrated, and okay, we're going to engage now. It's an opportunity, I think, to really think about what is engagement. What is engagement? Does it mean that you're happy at work? Does it mean that you're, you know, actually involved in your work and maybe your mood is not good or bad? It's just you're actually getting it done. What does it mean? Right? We got to get clear on that. Employee engagement, stagnation, money. Yes. There's definitely fear and anxiety from our board and employees to continue to do Jedi work as a nonprofit. Transparency has diminished. Uncertainty about continuity of federal funding with people who aren't in top leadership but still have folks who report to them they don't want to do. Our discrimination complaints are at an all-time high. Strategic positioning, how can I use the system to get what I want anyway, and lack of trust. For the one, and it's okay if you can't share, but when you say discrimination complaints are at an all-time high, I'm curious, and I usually don't use this word, but would you say, is it more discrimination or the reverse discrimination part? Are we seeing reverse
You know
discrimination?
what it is?
Yeah.
I think people are frustrated and they're grasping at straws. And so they're just going to a voice that will listen to them because when we're actually investigating and holding what's being sent in against the policy, it doesn't meet that. And so I think it's just people don't know where to go and they're adrift and they're looking for a life raft.
Yeah. And so if you haven't heard the term reverse discrimination, it's often used, like, I guess discrimination is for like women and underrepresented people. And then I think when white men started to feel discriminated against, they started to term it reverse discrimination. Like, you're being so nice to these groups that now I'm being discriminated against. But discrimination is discrimination. If a white male is being discriminated against, they don't need the word reverse on there, right? It's just discrimination, which could be true, right? It could happen, but that's another one to kind of look out for. So the current, you know, when we think about the executive orders and all the things that have been changing, the one that I think we really need to keep our eye on is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I think there will be a lot of fight to get rid of this. And if this goes, there's a lot that will topple underneath it. The Civil Rights Act actually made it possible for folks for them to desegregate the army, the military, right? So that was kind of the first place. Then that moved into the workplace, right? Then that added, you know, women's ability to be in the workplace in more expanded roles. So again, you pull out civil rights 64, a whole lot comes down crumbling behind it. Another couple things to note, gender is a binary. This is, I think, one of the first executive orders that Trump signed, which basically said we define gender as male or female. Now, we know, and some of you may even have systems that allow for you to put in if somebody identifies as transgender, right? Or some ways, processes for if they're going through a transition. So now, what does this do for organizations? It just creates a lot of like uncertainty. Organizations might be like, well, now do we have to stop saying pronouns? Like, can we still have them on our signature list? Yes, you can. There's no law saying you cannot. They can do it to the federal government, right? And they may be able to use it as a point if they were trying to come after a certain organization. They may say, oh, well, you use pronouns and that's not appropriate. But right now, it's not really a concern. The other interesting one is political affiliation and hiring. So this executive order permits political affiliation to be considered in federal hiring. Okay, so it is okay within the federal government to go ahead and find out what their affiliation is. Some people are calling it a loyalty test. So to work for the current administration, you really do have to be aligned with the administration and with Trump specifically. We know that that's a very slippery slope. Okay, and then ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunities. Again, this is basically just saying, these programs give preferential treatment to some people and not others. And we want it to be based on merit. Well, good. We do too. We don't want people to get the job if they're not qualified for the job, which means your cousin Bob is not getting this job. Right? So don't get too frazzled when you hear people push back with that. All right. So the current discrimination. Okay, so I talked about reverse discrimination a little bit, and we can kind of go past this one to talk about the journey. So, as I went through this journey of kind of figuring out what's next, I pulled out the change curve. This is the change curve that you should use every time you're going to be introducing any kind of change, or if people are just feeling really like low or low energy and you kind of got to put it on the table. This is how people feel when they're going through the change process, and they will move forward and they will also move backwards. You might toggle between experiment and decision for a long time. This is every change. So a change like getting a divorce, right? Or changing your whole technology systems, right? All of those things are change. Everything that's happening with administration is change. So when you think about these, where would you say you are? Like, what's a couple of you? What would a couple of you say? I can share. When I was watching Donald Trump speak to the UN, I was in shock. And today I'm in experimentation because I'm with y'all. Depression and experiment. Go back and forth. Yeah. So the importance of this is to remind yourself that you're a human being. Of course, you're going to feel these things. So where are you on this map? And then where do I want to go next? Do I need to just sit in this a little bit more? Or do I maybe need to try to kind of make some decisions? Or, I'm frustrated, but, I may end up feeling sad, and that's okay. It's part of the process. But eventually you move through the cycles, and then you're able to experiment with things like we're doing today. We can make decisions to make things better, and then we can integrate. And then you're doing everything that you've always done, just differently, right? Until the next change comes along. Christine, can you see Cecilia's screen share? Oh, can you see
She's
the
just
screen?
having issues seeing the curve, but I'll help her figure it out.
Okay, got it. All right, so we talked about that a little bit. So the old frameworks aren't working, right? DEI is becoming synonymous with politics, and leaders want guidance. And I needed a new way to speak to people. And so I really took a lot of time thinking about, like, what is my true north? What calls to me? Why am I doing this work? And I went back to these 3 questions, and I challenge you to answer these questions for yourself as well. What are my values? What do I refuse to compromise on? Right? Because it's okay to compromise on a lot of things, but there might be those couple things that you're like, nope. What outcomes are you working towards? And that's where the DEI piece can be really interesting, because we usually go at it from like, okay, we want African American population, let's kind of like understand that group, and do what we need to do there to maybe engage them. But, stepping back and saying, okay, what's the ultimate goal? Kind of makes you go, oh yeah, what was the goal? What were we shooting for? So, the other things I think helped is I stopped striving for a perfect framework. I started creating all these things. It's like, oh, it's not the right thing. I recentered it around human needs, right? So instead of identity focused specific, but just human needs. And then I redefined success. So here are the success outcomes that I would like. And then I'm gonna work backwards to say, how would you build an organization that actually functions in this way? which is how I got to this, is just the research that I looked at. I came to the people first performance framework. And so in this kind of culture that I've envisioned, right, it prioritizes self-awareness alongside technical skill. So we're not just looking for technical skill. It holds leaders accountable for both results and relationships, encourages intentional, inclusive, and courageous communication, makes space for difference and addresses conflict with curiosity, and embeds empathy into leadership, right? These were the things to me that would serve as an organization that I would love to work with. Um, just a few more pieces of the culture, but I want to go to this. So this is kind of forms the framework of the area. And what I did was I looked at what are all the processes, components that make up an organization, and what are the practices that actually create a high performance organization and a multicultural organization. And so these are the 5 drivers that really drive that. One is leading with integrity. We see lots of examples today of people who are leading without integrity, right? Not saying what they do, not doing what they say, and it fractures people, right? And maybe you're telling people something, but you're only saying it to your favorites, right? Within that is leadership and organizational integrity, right? Like, do you know what your vision, mission, and values are? And does your frontline person know them? Values and culture alignment. Does your leadership team even know what kind of culture they're trying to build? Because if you don't, it's going to build anyway. You just won't be doing it intentionally. And strategy and mission. What's your strategy? How does it make sense? How are people working together across departments? Building the right conditions, right? That there are conditions that people need in order to bring their best to the table. So that's the organizational structure. Like, how is it set up to who you're reporting to? Communication and transparency, right? Sometimes organizations are like, oh, we'll just communicate, when there's a thing going on. But no, you should have a regular way of communicating, because that way, when it's something important, you have that in place already, right? Empower people to grow. This is things like from recruitment to onboarding, learning, performance, and accountability. How are they continuing to grow? Right now, everybody should be doing some form of learning around AI, even if it's like 10 minutes, right? Because it's moving so fast. We've got to know how to utilize that. Create a culture of belonging. And I come at this with psychological safety and trust, right? Inclusion and belonging practices, and recognition and retention. Right? DEI flows through all of those things. And with the right infrastructure, you don't have to have a separate program, right? Your program is your organization and how it runs. The last is future sustainability. And this isn't just sustainability in terms of like ESG. This is really how do you create something that's going to last, right? And so this looks at change management, technology adoption, innovation, and sustainability. So the next thing that I'll be working on is an index where you'll be able to measure your organization using those particular frameworks. But what I want to share with you in these final minutes is my next program that I'll be putting out that really helps managers ground themselves in this people first culture framework. And come on up. All right. So it's a 6-week program. We meet once a week for 6 weeks starting in October. And these are the 6 sections that we're going to cover each week. The program is best for new managers, or if you've been managing for a while, but you're like, I have not had a class and I want to freshen up on some of the skill sets, especially for being a leader today, then yes, come on in. It's going to be a small cohort of people that will come together, and not only will you learn from the things that I teach, but you'll be learning from one another as well, which I think is a really important component. And we're going to give you the information for that right here. So here's the QR code that will give you the link. I don't know if Olivia, if you have the link ready that you could post in the chat as well.
Yeah, it's already in the chat.
Perfect. So it's called Leadership by Design. And it's really about getting managers feeling courageous, having clarity, and being able to move forward with confidence in this environment that is very volatile. It's simple approaches and ways that also bring in that DEI factor. So for each of the areas, we're always going to be talking about how DEI lives and is threaded in each of the sections that we're going to cover. So I'm excited about this, and I'm so glad that you all came so I could share it with all of you. There'll be much more. Like I said, there's an assessment coming, and I would love to do that assessment with some organizations. So please hit me up if you are interested in learning more about that. And if you or you know someone who is interested in this program, please share the information. We also have a discount for you all, and so that you'll get a reduced price for this.
I will say about the discount, there's no place to enter in a code on the application. So just mention this training, and we can honor the 10%.
Perfect. Yeah. And when you fill out the application, you're not paying anything up front. On the back end, once you're acceptance the program, then we'll ask you, is your company paying? Are you paying? How do you want to break up the payments? Those sorts of things. Wow, the hour went so fast. I know some of you got to go, so bye for those who've got to go. I will definitely send you these so that you have it all. Please spread the word about this, and look at the framework. I'd love to get feedback on that. If there's pieces that you feel like apply to your organization, test it out. Let me know how it goes. I think we're close to being able to evolve this work so that it stays alive. But we've got to do all of this work together. So thank you all for being here. But any questions for those of you who are still around? Any questions? Laura.
Yes, if this might be something that we can totally, if you want to noodle about it and take it offline, but in the event that, say, some of us on this call would like to possibly leverage this framework for our organizations, what could that look like in terms of, like, I think about like copyright, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to make sure that I'm being respectable and understandable and doing the right things by the beautiful curation of this work that you've done so far, and what are some best next steps?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. So what I'll send you already has like more information on it. So if you could just credit, Stanton Adams, you can just pull that or type that in on your slide. What I send you, you can feel free to use those slides as you wish. If you want to, like you said, apply some of this to your organization, let's set up a call and talk about it. I'm open to, seeing how we can do some of these things so that we can test some of this work within organizations. So definitely hit me up. Awesome. Any other questions? Yes, Denise? You're on. Oh no, you're just saying bye. Bye. Thank you so much.
We do have a question in the chat, Cecilia from Brittany. Will there be future programs beyond October of this year?
Yes, there will be. So we have another Honest Talks with Changemakers. It's a session that I do every month. Last time I had Jen Tardy. So coming up in October on Halloween, I will be having Nick Alm. And Nick Alm is amazing. And we'll be having a conversation about the transgender community, what's going on there, what are some of the things that are coming up for them, and what they're seeing out in the world. So I'm really excited to sit down and have that conversation. And then another one that I've been tooling around is, how to open your own consulting practice. There are a lot of DI practitioners out there who are kind of trying to figure out what's next for them. And I always think it's important to have your side business, even if you're not doing it full time, and you're only, even if you're only doing maybe a job or two every other month, you take a day off. That's how I started. And it was so good because I always had that there if I needed it. So if my job ended, if I got laid off, like I had this other place where I was building my reputation, and I was doing things I love, because sometimes you have to do stuff in an organization, but you can't do the really challenging things that you want to do. So your business allows you to do that.
Oh, it looks like Brittany clarified and is wondering specifically about more offerings of leadership by design.
Oh, yes. So this will be the first one. Yes, for sure. We're probably going to run another one in the spring. So not It's so not this year, but next year, probably in January, February will be our next session. Hopefully we'll get some good ones. And there'll be more trainings after that. The other thing is if you ever have like 5 or more people that you want going through this, we can bring this into your organization and follow the same 6-week model. And but then your group is going through it together. Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions? All right. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you. Love you all.
Outstanding.
So
Thank
good
you.
to see you. It's a good Wednesday. Bye, Laura. Thanks for coming, Christine.